Hello viewers and welcome to Novus Talks with me, your host Novus Corvius. And so with E3 2022 officially cancelled again, where does that leave us with Nintendo and their summer lineup, their showcase for summer? Because this is an incredibly packed year, like nothing we've ever seen before for the Switch. So Nintendo's got a lot to talk about, especially for releases coming out later in the year. But without E3, what do? Does Nintendo align themselves with Summer Games Fest, or do they do their Nintendo Direct on their own? Or do they shadow drop things? My biggest fear is that they will shadow drop announcements like 2020. I don't want to wake up and have to just see Metroid Prime 4's trailer just randomly dropped like 10 minutes ago. No. I want the full excitement. I want a full direct. I want to be in that mood, getting excited for other games, and then getting my mind blown with Metroid Prime 4, right? That's what I want. That's what's exciting to me. That's why we look forward to these summer events. But I don't know. Will Nintendo do a Nintendo Direct? Probably. But they didn't do one in 2020. So I don't know. Granted, the pandemic this year isn't affecting them in the same way it was in 2020, so they can actually do a Direct this year. But without E3, I don't know. Maybe I'm getting too worried up about nothing. But for argument's sake, let's say they do a Nintendo Direct, whether that's on its own or with Summer Games Fest, whatever. If they do a Nintendo Direct, what does it look like? There's a lot to talk about this year. First of all, Breath of the Wild 2 is the big question. As I said in my Breath of the Wild 2 video that I just released, I don't think we're going to see it, I was going to say at E3, in the summer. Initially I did, but it's been delayed, so I think we won't see that game till September. They'll focus on everything else in this Direct. What I do think will happen, Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD. Why? There's a Zelda release every year, and with Breath of the Wild delayed, they need to put out something they can make in a few months. Yes, they're probably working on a 2D Zelda or some remake or whatever elsewhere, but those would be big releases, and Breath of the Wild was supposed to be the big release this year, so I don't think they'd release those this year, especially not that close to Breath of the Wild. I think they'll give games like that their own extra time. I don't think there's any spin-offs this year either. Twilight Princess and Wind Waker HD make sense. Why? Those games are already made. It would take you 6 months to port them to Switch, which is probably why they didn't have them at the anniversary last year. Think about it. They probably were thinking to themselves, if Breath of the Wild gets delayed, we need something in 2022. There's been a Zelda game every year since 2013. We need something for this year. So realistically, the most logical choice is those two games, or at least one of them. Hopefully on a single cartridge, that'd be nice, but I think that'll happen. I'm pretty sure that'll get announced. When will they come out? Tough to say. Maybe July, maybe. That's what I think. Just because, September onwards is too crowded. Speaking of July, Splatoon 3, that's most likely when that's coming out. June, it would be coming out too close to the Nintendo Direct, so I think they'll have it come out in July, and they can have their Splatfest and their tournaments or whatever in June, and they can give themselves a month of marketing and hype for that game. That's what I think will happen there. Metroid, I'm calling it right now, Metroid Prime, whether that's Metroid Prime Trilogy or a remake of one, absolutely coming this year in August, the middle of August, just like always. Metroid Prime games are usually November, but Pokemon is coming out later in the year. They're not going to release those side by side, so probably August, because it wouldn't be too close to Xenoblade and Bayonetta. It would be just after Splatoon. August makes the perfect sense for Metroid Prime Trilogy. And again, I'll hammer my point home. I'm a broken record, I know, but once they announce that, we will see Metroid Prime 4. That concept art pretty much confirms it. At this point, you'd be hard-pressed to deny that we're going to see Metroid Prime 4 this year. Realistically, it's coming out at the end of next year, because at that point it'll have been 5 years the game was in development. And a game like that is not going to take longer than 5 years. This isn't like an 8, 9, 10-year development game. 5 years, plenty of time, given that they've hired like hundreds of people as well. The end of next year, giving them the maximum amount of time, I think, yeah, it could be like the summer next year, but I'm giving them the benefit of November next year because it gives them that extra time and it tempers my expectations. But I think we'll see the game. Maybe, will we get a 2-minute trailer? I don't know. Maybe we get like a 1-minute trailer, a 1.5-minute trailer like Breath of the Wild. Probably something like that. I don't know. We'll see. But we will see those games this year. And if we don't, I'll have to make some sort of wager. I'll figure that out in another video. But if we don't see those games, I'll have to make some sort of bet where I receive a punishment if we don't get Metroid Prime Showcase this year and Twilight Princess. We'll figure that out. What else? Mario Strikers will have just released at that point, so they'll probably give a brief glimpse into that. Same with Fire Emblem. They'll focus a small bit on it, but not give it too much time. Bayonetta 3, obviously that's going to be a big focus. The game comes out later this year. We know nothing about it. We've gotten one trailer for it, and the trailer wasn't great. So they have a lot to show us to get us interested in this game. And yeah, someone who's just been replaying the first two games for the first time in a few years, I'm really in sort of Bayonetta mindset right now. So I'm really excited to see more of that game. I hope it's good. I hope it lives up to expectations, but I'm keeping my expectations low. But we will see that game. We have to. Guaranteed, surely. I know I say that every single time, but at this point, the only reason you wouldn't see it this year is if it's getting delayed. And since they did a Metroid Prime 4 and Breath of the Wild 2 development update, they'll do one for Bayonetta, probably. Xenoblade, that'll obviously get a big focus. The Mario Kart DLC will probably get thrown in there in like a highlights kind of section, I imagine, because that's something that doesn't need that much time to sort of focus on. As for Pokemon, I don't think Pokemon will be there, or at least not like Scarlet and Violet. I think maybe small ones, sure, but I think the Pokemon company will want to keep that on themselves, or they'll save that for a September Direct, because at that point, you know, Xenoblade and Bayonetta will probably be out, or they'll be on the verge of coming out. So Pokemon will get its due diligence, and they'll be able to focus a lot more on that. And it's still, you know, too early to be showcasing that. So I think that we won't see that till September. Everything else, though, for the first time ever, it's weird to say, but everything is fair game for E3. If there's a game coming out this year, it will be at E3. Sparks of Hope, I completely forgot about that. Hopefully, if we don't see it at E3, I guess that confirms, or you know what I mean when I say E3. If we don't see it in summer, that'll confirm that it's being delayed. But yeah, that's basically the golden rule. If we don't see every game that we know of this year, pretty much coming out in summer, because they're all coming out so close together. There's so many big games. Everything is a big game, so they all kind of need, they're all like E3 worthy announcements and reveals. So it's going to be very exciting. This could be one of the best Nintendo Directs ever. The most exciting because you could have Metroid Prime 4, you could have Breath of the Wild, and you could have Bayonetta all at once. Like, what a fucking show that would be. I'm getting excited. It's way too early to be talking about this. We'll revisit these expectations later in the year, closer to June, or if Nintendo puts out some sort of announcement. But for now, that's my thoughts on the matter. Obviously, there's one other game I didn't mention here, and that's Advance Wars. Tough to say. You know, we all know the reason Advance Wars was delayed. Just like Breath of the Wild, it was one of those things that, given the current situation, it was so obvious it would get delayed. Does that even still release this year? You know, unless you can see into the future, you can't really pinpoint that one for sure, because that will really depend on how things are going on in the world. So, you know, if things still are as they are currently, there's not a hope. If things have died down, then maybe. Advance Wars is also one of those games that they're lucky they delayed it, because that would have gotten swallowed up by Kirby, no pun intended. a bit like Breath of the Wild, one of those things that would have just sort of fallen in between the cracks. So it's a good thing for Advance Wars that gets delayed, because maybe that gets its own month to itself as well, and they can generate more hype for that game. They can actually give us more trailers and give people a reason to be excited. But yeah, that's every game covered, I think. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comment section below. What do you think of all this? What are your predictions for this year? Do you think Advance Wars is still coming out this year? Will we see Bayonetta in the summer? Will that get delayed? Will Sparks of Hope get delayed? Are we getting Twilight Princess HD and Wind Waker HD? I want to hear everything you have to say down in the comment section below. And yeah, with that all said, thank you all for watching and please subscribe. Novus Corvius out.